The first sort of question is obviously quite a relevant one, a topical one. Is the issue of the Northern Irish Protocol and how that's sort of been sort of demonstrated on the problems with the Northern Irish Protocol, with the whole vaccine debacle that we've seen over the previous weekend, and the actions of the European Commission triggering Article 16 of the Brexit deal. What are your thoughts on that, and what comments have you got to say to that?
Well, I mean, I've been quite vocal on the Northern Irish Protocol ever since the 17th of October, when the Prime Minister, actually before that, I've been vocal on the Northern Irish Protocol since I visited Northern Ireland back in June or July 2019. And I read a document produced by the EU in November 2017, which made it quite clear that you could have a smart border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, that there was no need for any hard infrastructure of any nature actually on that border, bearing in mind that it already separates two countries, two currencies, two tax rates, and two phytosanitary regions. And it wasn't beyond the wit of man to create a smart border without the need for any installations. And just to reiterate for viewers who aren't familiar with this, the Good Friday Agreement in clause 22 only prohibits security installations, in other words, military installations on the border. It doesn't prohibit customs checks. So the whole Northern Irish border issue was, as I've said many times, in my opinion, weaponized by the European Union in cahoots with Ireland and Remainers in the United Kingdom to try and frustrate Brexit and to put a spanner in the wheel of Brexit. And what they've ended up doing is forcing us into having an Irish sea border, which was entirely unnecessary. And we have seen that they themselves now accept that Irish sea border is not necessary, because they would never have invoked Article 16 if they thought that was going to result in an instant violent reaction on the island of Ireland. They wouldn't have done it. I presume they wouldn't have done it if that's what they had concluded. So we now have the EU admitting that the Irish sea border wasn't required, that they're content with a border on the island of Ireland. Of course, they immediately recognized that the optics of the decision that they made on Friday night completely belied the representations they've been making for the previous 3 or 4 years. And the pushback that they clearly got, instantly from the international community, particularly bearing in mind the implications for life-saving vaccines being prohibited from getting into the UK, legitimately getting into the UK, was enough to make von der Leyen backtrack. But their weaponizing of that border and the misrepresentations they made about that border, I think, are now utterly clear for everyone to see. And what the government should be doing is grasping this golden opportunity to repudiate the Northern Irish Protocol. While it's still clear in everyone's mind that the EU has dropped its mask, that it's revealed that it's, that border could easily have been on the island of Ireland without any difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was quite a supporter of the Brexit deal. However, now not so much, and I do think that I've always been against the Northern Irish Protocol, and I think it does need to be dropped as soon as possible. And like you say, it's proved that it's pretty easy to have that sort of smart border on the island of Ireland rather than in the Irish Sea, which divides the United Kingdom between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. So
it's very interesting, by the way, Ethan, sorry to interrupt, but it was very interesting. They're using smart border technology in Calais to speed through trucks. So a lot of the Remainers with whom I had, umpteen debates, as I'm sure both of you have as well, have said, the technology is not advanced enough. Well, actually, it is advanced enough. It's being used.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a thing that I think a lot of people would find difficult to comprehend, especially those who've been so in favour of having a second referendum, and those kind of Remainers or Remoaners, if you like. The other thing that's obviously quite big at the moment is lockdown and when it's going to end, if it'll ever end, as some people are saying. But what do you think the government's biggest priority is for exiting the lockdown? What do you think should reopen first?
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to say one more thing on Northern Irish Protocol before I go.
Yeah, please do.
You might recall, Ethan, I don't know if you were there or whether Alice, you were there, but I spoke at the Bruges group just before lockdown, actually, in March.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I think that's where we first spoke to each other.
And I said, repudiate the Northern Irish Protocol, be brave, repudiate it. And then I wrote, many articles about it, gave many interviews on the subject. And then in September, on the 12th of September, the Prime Minister recognized in an article that he wrote in the Telegraph, saying that his one arm had been tied behind his back when he did the withdrawal agreement, and that the Internal Market Bill is a vital bit of legislation. I'm quoting him, a vital bit of legislation in order to preserve the internal market of the United Kingdom and to prevent EU state aid law from applying in the UK broadly. And then that bill, then the Internal Market Bill was varied to drop the important clauses that would have protected the internal market as far as Northern Ireland and Great Britain were concerned. And contrary to what Michael Gove said in the Commons on the 9th of December, when he said there wouldn't be creeping control of EU state aid law from Northern Ireland into Great Britain, contrary to what he said, actually on the 18th of January this year, the EU published a document saying that it would be holding the UK to account for any direct or indirect assistance given to firms that either have operations in Northern Ireland or trade with Northern Ireland. So it would be sufficient for my company to simply buy something from Northern Ireland to be prevented from being able to take UK government aid without the EU having oversight of it. So I'm afraid the government has entirely bottled it on the subject of Northern Ireland. It signed into the withdrawal agreement, admittedly, and I agree with Boris Johnson, he had one arm tied behind his back, but then he got his 80-seat majority. He then recognized that he'd signed into something bad. He wrote that he'd signed into something bad. He came up with a solution to it, and then he dropped the solution. And so now we do have a partition country. And he's been given another opportunity now by the EU to get rid of that protocol. And he needs to do it. He needs to, instead of Michael Gove saying, oh, well, that was a mistake made by the EU, or instead of endorsing any narrative that is von der Leyen who's responsible, which effectively lets the EU off the hook. That's why they're all hanging von der Leyen out to dry, because they want to protect the EU. This wasn't von der Leyen making a spontaneous on-the-spot decision on a Friday night. This was the result of a week-long considered effort to undermine the AstraZeneca vaccine to start with, and then to prevent it from getting into the United Kingdom. This was a concerted effort by the EU to damage British interests, potentially British lives. And I think it's just too magnanimous for the government to sit back and say, oh, it was a mistake, or von der Leyen is responsible, and we're going to just, move on and forget it ever happened. Sorry, that's everything I want to say on it. But, it's important stuff.
I completely agree. And I'm glad you are making these points, because it's important that we do get these points across. And I know the DUP have been very good in conveying these messages about the hard border or the lack of sort of thing, and the whole discussion over the protocol. And like you say, that this is the perfect opportunity to drop us. And Boris Johnson should do just that. I completely agree there.